Today is an extremely special day on Drive Every Ferrari because I don't just have one Testarossa, I've got two. Yes, that's right, friend of the car guys, Piers has kindly offered his slightly modified left-hand drive 512 TR, and his friend Rob has brought his magnificent yellow original Testarossa so that I can tell you the story of this iconic 80s and 90s Ferrari. Ferrari made three versions of the Testarossa and followed the original up with the 512 TR in 1991 and then the 512M in 1994. This week I'm going to try and convince you to love the Flat-12 Testarossa as much as I do. We're going to look into the history and variations of the car, what makes them special, those quirky features, and of course, what they're like to drive. And yes, of course, we're going to have to mention Miami Vice and Wolf of Wall Street. And if you have a 512M that you'd like to see featured on the channel and complete the Testarossa trilogy, then please get in touch. So if that sounds like your special kind of pina colada with a coloured umbrella in it, let's get on with it. Cards on the table then, folks. I love the Testarossa, always have. But strangely, and perhaps stupidly, I've never actually owned one. I've come close, believe me. I almost bought Elton John's car, and I vividly remember driving to the dealership to buy one, only to find it driving in the opposite direction with its new happy owner on board. I swore for quite a while after that one, I can tell you. I would already have a 512 TR in the Car Guys collection if it wasn't for one thing. The fact that the prices shot up for a few years from £100,000 to £200,000. And that for me was a bit much. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's look at the history of this range-topping Flat-12 Ferrari and how it became the poster child for 80s and 90s desire, excess and luxury. Given the profile of its future owners, it's perhaps apt that the Testarossa, codenamed F110, was first shown in 1984 to the press in the salubrious setting of the Lido nightclub on Paris's Champs-Élysées. And then it got its full public reveal at the Paris Motor Show. There, doesn't it look spectacular? The design was led by none other than the person I seem to end up saying more than any other on this channel, Leonardo Fioravanti, who also did the 308. The original 1958 250 Testarossa was an open-topped V12 race car with more power than its predecessor, the 500 TRC. It is also one of the most beautiful Ferraris ever made and the first 1/18th scale Barago model that I ever owned. It was spelt and said as two distinct words with the very creamiest of Italian accents. Testarossa. Remember to roll that R, people. Whereas the new car is one word. Ferrari's 70s Berlinetta boxers, notably the 512 BB, used the underpinnings, engine and the layout of what would eventually become the Testarossa, but they were prone to overheating and other mechanical issues. A new model would aim to address those and at the same time beat the Lamborghini Countach on the world stage. The 1984 Testarossa was designed as a world car, which meant that it was available for sale in the US, unlike the Berlinetta boxers that it replaced. And as a consequence, Ferrari sold 7,177 original Testarossas, 3 times as many as all Berlinetta boxer variants combined. Although there were mechanical advancements over the 512 BB, it was the exterior looks of the Testarossa that made the greatest impact on the order books. It really is a striking shape and now synonymous with 80s excess. When Wolf of Wall Street's Jordan Belfort needed a car to impress, what did he choose? A white Testarossa, of course. And if you're a child of the 70s, you will also no doubt associate the Testarossa with Don Johnson in Miami Vice. Early Testarossas featured 16-inch wheels and a single high-mounted wing mirror on the left side of the car, but this was soon replaced with one on either side mounted in conventional positions. And the price for all this in 1984? 62,666 of your English pounds. Ferrari made 3 versions of the Testarossa and followed the original up with the 512 TR and then the 512M. Ferrari famously only produced one Spider version of the Testarossa, despite numerous high-profile clients asking for this model. It was in 1986 and it was commissioned for Gianni Agnelli, president of Fiat. Just look at it. The updated 512 TR arrived in 1991, and it's certainly my favourite version thanks to a number of dynamic improvements, but still capturing the original design. The biggest 512 TR improvements were the Nickersill liners for the cylinders, a new air intake system, Bosch K Jetronic engine management systems to increase power to 422 brake horsepower, single plate clutch to make it easier to change gears, larger brake discs, 315mm at the front, 310 at the rear. The chassis was tuned to give better turn-in, improved handling and a smoother ride. You also got 18-inch wheels, an improved revised nose design which mirrored the 348, simpler engine cover, new rear bumpers, and the engine and gearbox were lowered for better weight distribution and to stop the car spinning quite so easily. In total, 2,280 512 TRs were made, so it is a much rarer model than the standard Testarossa. 1994 saw the final most powerful and rare Testarossa appear, the slightly uglier but better to drive 512M, M for Modificato. The main improvements over the 512 TR for that model were titanium connecting rods for better engine response, a new crankshaft, power was increased to 440 brake horsepower, it had new round rear headlights, which I hate. Pop-up headlights were now under clear covers and square. It had new bumpers front and rear and twin knacker ducts on the bonnet or hood. And crucially, just 500 were made, making it the rarest Testarossa and in theory, highly collectible. If only it didn't look like a dog's dinner. Nearly 40 years later, the Testarossa still has the ability to shock if you see one in the wild. I mean, look at them. One in classic Rosso Corsa, the other in eye-stinging giallo. That's yellow to you and me. Let's do a walk around of these two fine beasts and point out not only the differences, but what makes the Testarossa such a design classic. And this little beauty is a nearly stock, apart from a tubey exhaust, right-hand drive original 1989 Testarossa, which boasts a unique spec. Yes, that's right, out of the 7,177 made, this is the only car to be right-hand drive, yellow, and with a brown interior. And I know what you're thinking, but Damien, only geniuses spec brown interiors for Ferraris, and yes, you would be right. This red 512 TR is a 1994 car owned by Piers. It's a left-hand drive model imported from Japan and with a few juicy options. Notably, it's got a Kreisig exhaust, which I'm told makes this Ferrari sound pretty good. Oh my God! And if you think this particular 512 TR looks meaner and more purposeful than most, you would be right, sir. It has actually been slightly lowered and it's got spacers on the wheels to fill out the arches. It's also got a Momo Alcantara steering wheel instead of the stock unit and a quick shift metal selector gate. One of the big differences between the two cars is the treatment of the front. As you can see here on the original, we've got double stacked lights here and also a larger, squarer black grille. And on the 512 TR, we've got one big light. You've actually got more ducting here on the bumper, and you've got a slightly smaller, more modest front grille as well. So really, the aerodynamics was part of the big changes to the front bumper of the 512 TR. What an absolute stunner this car is in yellow. Wow, I mean, I love the red, but the yellow, whew, just takes your breath away. Now note that the radiators were placed at the rear to create a more unbalanced configuration and to eliminate hot water pipes. That's why, for example, that we've got these enormous ducts here on the side. These ones here are obviously fake and designed by Pininfarina, but they merge seamlessly with the actual active cooling ducts. Pininfarina used that engineering decision to its advantage and created a stylish wedge shape wider at the rear than at the front. The chassis is an evolution of the 512BB tubular steel monocoque center section, and you've got independent wishbone suspension and coil springs all round. You've also got ventilated brakes, which are 310 millimeters on this original car. But even now, nearly 40 years later, the Testarossa still has the ability to deliver true shock and awe. It is a fantastic shape, impossibly large, impossibly wide, but with so many intricate little design details. It's the side vents that completely dominate, obviously, the design, and even today are super, super cool. You've got a lot of glass, so you've got a lot of visibility. You can see we've got the Pininfarina badge here to show that that styling house designed the car. But overall, what makes the Testarossa shape so impressive is how low it is and how wide and how imposing, and also that rear end. And what a rear end it is. Look how wide this car is. Look how low it is at the back. Completely dominated by the flat engine cover. On the original car, you've got this large square body-coloured section over the top of the engine bay, and that was replaced later on for the 512 TR, as I'll show you in a minute. Twin enormous exhausts. On this one, remember, they're aftermarket tubey, but these strips here, this design element, which actually sit in front of the brake lights, I mean, it's just a masterstroke, because what it does is it makes the car look really thin and low at the back. It's just a staggeringly beautiful design treatment. And then you move up here and those black slats are then mirrored on the engine cover. One thing I've never really noticed is actually just here on these C-pillars, you've got a grille all the way along the top. So that's additional cooling, no doubt, for the engine. Another key part of the Testarossa experience from the exterior are these enormous wings here. You can pretty much rest a round of drinks on here. It's a big old flat surface and it helps to enhance the width of the car. But you can see the front wings are quite thin and delicate, and then they gradually expand out as these side vents increase. And then by the time you get at the back of the car here, I mean, it's basically a foot wide. The main reason, of course, why the Testarossa has to be so wide at the back is to fit that monster Flat-12 engine. Now, both these Rossas featured today feature the long-serving Flat-12 4943cc naturally aspirated engine with its distinctive red valve covers. That's where Testarossa, Italian for redhead, comes from. You've got redesigned cylinder heads over the 512BB and 4 valves per cylinder, so that's 48 valves. Not to mention fuel injection, so you don't have to worry about fine-tuning carburetors. Here's a convenient comparison of all three main Testarossa variants so that you can see how the model developed over time and where improvements in performance were made. The original Testarossa is 0 to 60 in 5.8 seconds. It's got 390 brake horsepower, that's 395 PS. Top speed, 180 miles an hour, that's 290 kilometers an hour. It weighs a little over 1,500 kilograms dry, and the torque is 361 pounds-feet, which is 490 Newton meters. The Testarossa 512 TR is 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds. It's got 428 brake horsepower, which is 434 PS. The top speed has increased to 195 miles an hour, that's 314 kilometers. It weighs 1,473 kilograms, so lighter, and torque has increased to 362 pounds-feet, which is 491 Newton meters. The Testarossa 512M is faster again, 0 to 64.7 seconds, 440 brake horsepower, that's 446 PS. Top speed is 196 miles an hour, which is 315 kilometers. It weighs 1,455 kilograms, and it's got 369 pound-feet of torque, which is 500 Newton meters. So actually, when you compare the three, even though the 512M has a lot more power, it's not actually that much faster. And here we are at the back of the 512 TR. Again, similar shock and awe, similar width of the rear wings. You've still got the fabulous black slats here at the back, but on top of the engine cover, quite a different treatment actually. Body coloured slats here, as on the F355, and then it moves to a black section further up in the engine with even more venting on it. To my mind, the 512 TR's engine cover is a bit fussy compared to the pure original Testarossa, but it is functional, and I like the fact that it's body coloured here, so the whole back is body coloured, and actually this harks back more, I think, to the 512 BB predecessor. As you can see here, we've got 4 tailpipes of that special exhaust. Other big differences of the 512 TR from the exterior, different wheels entirely. I have a bit of a secret hankering for the original Testarossa ones, but these ones look pretty cool, and obviously they were increased to 18 inches over the original's 16. But overall, part of the reason why I really like the 512 TR is it's got dynamic and mechanical advancements, but the shape is pretty similar to the original, unlike the 512M. Okay, let's have a look inside the interior of this unique Testarossa. Of course, most people will assume that you push this in order to enter the Testarossa, but of course no, it's a trick. So it's definitely not this. You have to reach underneath, do the old reach around, just like the 355, and there's a lever just underneath. There you go. So very wide sill. Oh, you're climbing over that. And behold the magnificence. This is a majesty of 70s colours really in this 89 Testarossa. We've got cream leather, we've got brown carpets, brown leather dashboard, lots of geometric shapes, lots of ill-fitting carpets and exposed screw heads. Yep, this is what Ferrari was like in the 80s, a little bit slapdash, but with a lot of passion. And as you can see, you've got quite a sizable parcel shelf behind the seats, which you can fit a surprising amount of custom leather luggage in, as you can see here. There's your fire extinguisher. Anyone with a V12 Ferrari will know that that is an essential item. A beautiful thin steering wheel, 3-spoke. Classic, very thin, looks like they'll snap in a second, instrument stalks. Right ahead of me, I have some astoundingly brilliant Cannonball Run-esque dials. They've got that font that Ferrari used in the 80s and actually the 70s. Everything is in orange and yellow. I've got the rev counter prominently over on the left. In the middle, I've got oil level and water temperature, and on the right, I've got the speedo, which goes up to 200 miles an hour. Now, just like Ferraris in the 80s and 90s, on my right-hand side in this right-hand drive car, I have a drop handle handbrake. I've also got 2 supreme chrome paddles, which are used to open the front boot or frunk, and this rear one to open the engine cover. So it's just like the 308 328. The center console is a real marvel. It's all in chocolate brown. I've got space for my knickknacks and also my cassette tapes. Younger viewers may need to Google or look up on Wikipedia what cassettes are, but they were ancient musical storage devices that you would put into a tape player and then listen to music, or indeed record sounds. It's always great to see those in here, and I'm half expecting to find a copy of Jan Hammer's Crockett's theme in here, as I thought was mandatory for all Testarossas, but strangely, no, there are no tapes in here. Rob, you need to sort that out. Now, this is obviously a 5-speed dogleg gearbox, which means that first is bottom left, so you've got to be very careful about that and not accidentally try and ram it into reverse when you think you're getting into first. Lots of lovely period knobs here. Almost all the buttons are different shapes and sizes, so it's a real parts bin bonanza in this car. We've got switches, we've got sort of ejection buttons, we've got turning knobs, we've got these little breaker switches. It's all pretty crazy, pretty chaotic, and you really need to look at a diagram just like this to work out exactly what everything is. I love the way we've got an array of buttons up here, so cars with buttons in the roof are always cool. See Lamborghini Miura. I absolutely love the fact that this nozzle here, which redistributes air, looks like it's come straight from an aircraft. And it's also noticeable that these, what looks like handmade dials, have been thrown into this cheap plastic display. They're quite deep. As you look down, there's a sort of essential dial there. You've got the fuel level there, and here we've got a sort of trip computer slash mileometer, and it just looks like something you would get on a bicycle. Yeah, it looks flimsy as hell, and it looks like you could easily wind back the mileage on this thing. It hasn't in any way aged well. It is very much of its time, but that time was wonderful. Remember, the 80s was the greatest decade of mankind. Let's have a look at the 512 TR. Well, this looks like a Stuttgart nightclub in here. Very macho, very Jean-Claude Van Damme, very Schwarzenegger. Everything is black leather. It's kind of like an S&M dungeon, but that's how people liked them in the 90s. Now this is the 512 TR. It's a left-hand drive, as you may have noticed, which means that immediately the gear stick makes a lot more sense. It's angled towards me, it's right next to me, it falls naturally to hand as it is supposed to. You could tell the disdain of the Italians for making a right-hand drive Testarossa. Now, as with the earlier car, we've got the drop handle handbrake here, the 2 chrome levers for the frunk and for the engine bay. In this car, the central tunnel and actually the whole interior is a lot better designed, is a lot better realised. We've got a proper self-contained centre tunnel here. We still have quite a smorgasbord of different buttons, some of them aftermarket and some of them stock. I suspect that this eject button here is not standard. There's been some slight Mad Max modifications, but overall it's a little bit neater, it's a bit more professional. Again, you're going to need quite an extensive instruction manual to work out what the hell they all are, but it's good to see that the ashtray gets pride of place, as does the cigarette lighter. We still have tapes in this car. The 90s was still tape. CDs had come in, but for some reason Testarossa man still demanded his tapes. This area here is far better realised than in the original. So we've got the petrol gauge and the oil temperature and the clock in its own little binnacle, which is tied into the dashboard. The ventilation is more professional, as you can see immediately. You still have, though, the little aircraft nipple up here, which I very much appreciate, and these buttons are pretty much the same. The dials, a little bit different. In this case, on the left-hand side, we've got the speedo with the actual mileometer integrated into it. You've got the oil level and water temperature, engine cooling temperature in the middle, and the rev counter on the right-hand side. Still magnificently orange. You can see here this one has an aftermarket Momo Alcantara steering wheel. Overall, you can definitely see how they have evolved what was quite a 70s design and materials into something a bit more serious. Here we are then, this is it. I'm in an original Testarossa. I'm very excited actually. I'm going to drive both of these cars, so you're going to get to enjoy both of them. Dog leg first. It is quite a hot day, but let's see what it's like. So, first impressions, it's got a sort of bus angled steering wheel, so it's quite upright and tilted, so you sort of drive it like an old Mini or a bus. The ride is surprisingly compliant, and it is built for grand touring, let's face it, so it should be quite a smooth ride. Now, the thing that obviously I'm excited about with this car is it's an original, so it's good to sort of go back to Genesis and then compare it to the 512 TR. It's in Giallo, probably Giallo Fly I would imagine, but it's a bright yellow and it does look absolutely insane in this colour. Now it's right hand drive, the gearbox feels great, it's a manual box, it's an open gate, so it does feel great. We have to remember this is a very wide car, so when it comes to cyclists like that one, didn't really want to pitch them off, but visibility is fantastic. Out the back I can see everything. The seats are very comfortable. It's an elegant brown and cream place to be, and I love the retro feel of this car. Everyone says that Testarossas are actually quite nice to drive, and I'm happy to report that I think they're right. They are. I'm absolutely loving the dials. Full on cannonball run mode. I love it. I thought actually it would probably be a bit more aggressive than this, but I can really see why 7,000 people bought this car. It's the best of both worlds. I mean, it's unheard of these days that the V12 flagship would be one of the best sellers in the range at the time. But you can really see with this, it was expensive, it was thirsty, it was complicated, but it's elegant and sophisticated, and you can pretty much drive it anywhere. Responses are good, the steering is very keen and really alert in my hands. Oh, brakes not too bad. I'm not going to say they're hugely confidence inspiring, but they're not too bad. No idea what any of the buttons do, but I simply don't care. But what a view out through the wing mirrors at the haunches of this car. Oh, I'm in full Miami Vice mode. Oh yes, look at that. It corners really flat. Oh yeah, look at that, come on. But since this is the first time I've ever actually driven an original Testarossa, it would be rude if we didn't experience some beans. It is drive every Ferrari after all. So here we are, second gear, 3,000 revs in an original Testarossa. Are you ready? Because I am. Here we go. Oh, feel the power, feel the surge. Oh! Now, the brakes definitely not up to the job. Oh, you get quite a surge from the engine. It does not feel that fast. I think that's probably the first thing you should say. If you're expecting this to feel like a rocket ship, no. You get a really good surge of acceleration. You get an amazing sound. Let's face it, the sound of this thing is, I mean, it's almost unparalleled, isn't it? But it's not super fast. But most of the joy actually in driving it is looking out over that enormous engine deck, is looking out the wing mirrors at the width of the thing. It's revving that engine. Oh, it's just enjoying the experience. It doesn't take long to get used to a dog leg, by the way. I know some people might be concerned about that and might actually even put people off buying a car that's got one, but honestly, your mind just adjusts and it's gone within a few minutes. I'll tell you what, let's jump into the 512 TR and find out just how different it is and whether or not I would own one. Right, now we're talking, ladies and gentlemen, and this is the 512 TR. Oh, now as you can tell, we've got a decent amount of ventilation going on. That's good. Got an aftermarket Momo steering wheel, smaller than the normal one, a bit more racy. If we pull down the drop handle, now this has got a very special exhaust on it, so this is going to be a treat, ladies and gentlemen, and we're also going to find out just how different this car is to the original. So let's pull away, shall we? Oh. Now this feels, well, I'm going to need to put this fan on because it is roasting in here. Now immediately this feels like a more serious proposition than the more dainty and elegant Testarossa, the original. It's louder, it's a bit stiffer, and it feels meaner. It just feels like a meaner, more aggressive beast straight away. This feels a bit more like an aggressive track orientated car, but that could also be the steering wheel. But let's wow, let's get this up here. Oh yeah, but the gear change is still absolutely sweet. Now, left-hand drive cars should hold no fear for any of you, because your brain adjusts to it straight away, so it's no issue at all. Because this car naturally is left-hand drive, the gear stick sits a lot more comfortably to hand. Interestingly, the pedals are way offset to the right, but my feet are all the way over here, which is quite strange. Didn't notice that at all in the right-hand drive Testarossa. It's a little bit of a harsher ride, but also remember this car has been lowered, and as you can hear though, it's a lot more noisy. It is a lot more noisy. So that's 4th gear, we're in there, and that's a kind of cruising sort of speed on British roads, and it is quite loud. This feels quite special actually. Oh my goodness. Oh wow. Yeah, that's... Oh, the engine is so silky, creamy smooth. It is just a wonderful thing. Oh, a little bit of a blip on the throttle just to ease that gear stick into the gate. That's the Ferrari magic right there. Now, there's quite a lot of traffic on the roads today, sadly, mainly because of stupid, idiotic fuel protesters on the motorways. But I think regardless of that, have no fear, ladies and gentlemen, I will be giving you a enormous man-sized portion of beans with this car, because of course with that custom exhaust it sounds exactly like a Formula 1 car. It's insane. It's actually insane. So what are the first impressions? Well, it does feel large. The view out of the wing mirrors on the TR is just as dramatic as the Testarossa. I can just see the enormous hips of this car, that wider rear end. The steering is obviously mechanical and perfectly weighted, and that's an idiot. It corners flat, it's very civilized. Oh, this one is obviously very loud. It is exactly as I expected it to be. It is incredible. It's a proper dream car, the 512 TR. You just get the feeling that this thing could snap and take your head off, and you've got to love that. I have no idea what any of this stuff does. All I can tell is that that one, you turn it all the way round to get the highest fan setting, and nothing happens until the last millimetre of travel, and then it goes full bonkers. Classic Italian electronics, classic Italian ergonomics. You just feel like you're in something historic and something that you've seen in TVs and movies throughout your whole life, and that gives you an extra special feeling that you just don't get with the majority of other cars, let alone Ferraris. It's such a car's the star, this, that you are acutely aware that you are driving something very, very wide indeed. So we're going to go around a roundabout. That's a very British thing, and I've no idea if I'm scraping the inside of the roundabout. I'm going to come off here. Oh, look at that. We're in 2nd gear, and I wondered whether you'd be interested perhaps in some beans. Do you think that's something you'd be interested in? Okay, let's see what we've got going on here. So there we are, we're coming up to a straight. Right, so 2nd gear, Ferrari 512 TR, you ready? Oh, listen to it. Listen to that sound. Oh, forget your Carrera GTs, you need to get one of these. Now, did you notice as well, very similar to the Testarossa, the original, although this has got more power, it's not a huge amount more power, so you still had time to enjoy the revs. It didn't just go wow, wow, wow. You actually had a chance to feel the build up, you had time to enjoy it as it built, as it built, as it built. There was a good push of acceleration, but it wasn't crazy, and it just allowed you to enjoy that sound even more. Oh, it's proper old school. Cornering is totally flat. Totally flat. Ready? Here we go then. Let's do a first gear. First gear, Beans. Are you ready? Oh! 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 Oh, let's just slow it down a little bit. Well, that was practically a religious experience. My whole body is tingling with excitement and adrenaline. That was so much noise. It was a good shove of acceleration, but you just were constantly thinking, what happens if the rear lets go? What happens if the power overcomes the rear tyres and we start spinning? But thank you to a friend of the Car Guys, Piers, for letting me drive this car. And of course, thank you to Car Guys friend Rob for his yellow original. This has been a spectacular day getting to know and to enjoy these two cars. This Drive Every Ferrari business really is creating some fantastic episodes on this channel, and I'm so privileged and thankful to all of you who have lent me cars and all of you who have promised to lend me cars. It's just such a privilege really to drive it and to impart the experience to everyone out there watching. Your cars are being immortalised on film forever, and this has definitely been a very special day. A very, very special day. I think the 512 TR is most definitely a Ferrari that I could see in the Car Guys garage in the future. There's no doubt about that. It's so pretty and iconic, and obviously it's a Flat-12. It's a pretty car and it's very special. Thank you for watching this episode of The Car Guys on these two magnificent Testarossas, the original Testarossa and the 512 TR. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you found it interesting and entertaining. If you like what we do on The Car Guys, please subscribe, leave comments and likes. There'll be another episode next week.